I covered Lady Gaga's Shallow a few months ago. Because in so many ways, it's my story. There's something about covering a song where each lyric feels like you're bearing your soul.
Tell me something, girl. Are you happy in this modern world? Or do you need more? Is there something else you're searching for? I'm falling. In all the good times I find myself.
As those lyrics reveal the most vulnerable aspects of your humanity. Because of its complexity, it cannot do so without also revealing its strength and its capacity.
Tell me something, boy. Aren't you tired trying to fill that void? Or do you need more? And I keep it so hardcore. I'm falling. In all the good times I find myself longing for change. And in the bad times I feel myself I'm off the deep end. Watch as I dive in. I'll never meet the ground. Crash through the surface where they can't hurt us. We're far from the shallow now. In the shallow, shallow. In the shallow, shallow. In the shallow, shallow.
You met me in the midst of many things. Shedding skin, sprout wings. Looking at life as a spiritual being through a human lens. Having conversations with God about so many things. This show is your invitation. The poet God is the conversation. I knew that in order for this podcast to live up to its full potential, it would require me to come to the mic with a willingness to be more vulnerable than I ever have before. One of the reasons I have been away from it for so long is because, in some ways, I've been unable to do that. I've also been unable to turn back. The path forward has narrowed quite a bit, and I've been paralyzed by the burden of just how I should navigate it. I saw your messages saying, just don't quit. I felt the sentiments you shared about the words I spit. I've held them near in this place I sit. And to know you care matters quite a bit. But I'm falling. There's a part of me being suffocated by my calling. It's saying, no more stalling. Its power over me is so appalling. I want to go, but this stuff I'm hauling cannot go with me. And without it, I don't see a path to victory. So I'm here starving for fulfillment in the thing I must do, the thing that brought me to you, but burdened by what I have been unable to leave behind, the thing that pays the bills and satisfies the practical mind. I'm torn by these things that are all intertwined, and a calling I know is so deeply divine. The path I must go is narrow still. How much more must I be torn to fulfill its will? How much emptier must I be to be fulfilled? How much more skin must I shed to sprout my wings? Am I strong enough to survive these things? And if I survive, if I manage to thread the needle, will I find the journey a necessary evil?
Big questions. Who do I want to be in the world? Be excellent. People notice. Let excellence be your brand. Everybody talks about building a brand. I never even knew what that was. When people say, you're a brand, I would say, no, I'm just Oprah. What I recognize now is that my choice to, in every way, in every example, in every experience, to do the right thing and the excellent thing is what has created the brand.
Well, that was none other than the amazing Oprah Winfrey, whose show I've watched since I was 11 years old. And if you were wondering why Dear Oprah is in the title of this episode, well, you're about to find out right after these messages.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had so many questions. Like, how do I record an episode? Where do I find background music? How do I get to show my podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places people like to listen? And where do I find advertisers? The answer to every one of those questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is the one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing, and monetizing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free and 100% ridiculously easy to use. Personally, I like that Anchor allows me to focus on being creative while they handle all the less interesting details about producing a podcast. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast.
2011, though, will be a year of change for Oprah. She will end the Oprah Winfrey Show after 25 years. And on New Year's Day, she launches the Oprah Winfrey Network.
On January 1st, 2011, when Oprah launched OWN Network, I started a Facebook group for viewers who wanted a place to discuss the issues brought to light through its programming. Several years later, through many ups and downs, our group has emerged as the most popular group for Oprah and OWN viewers. Now, the Viewers Club, as it's known to thousands, will feature exclusive content from a new edition of this podcast called Dear Oprah. This new edition of the podcast will feature content inspired by shows, interviews, social media posts, and events happening in and around the world of OWN. In this episode, we are kicking things off with a column written exclusively for the Viewers Club called Dear Oprah, Looking for Hope, which I will share with you after this short break. Dear Oprah, it's easy to forget how scary the world can look through the eyes of a child. But like the memories, the scars linger from my feet to my fingers. Some I can touch and hold, but others I must tend to differently, like the ones on my soul. I don't know which is worse, the things that harmed me or the inescapable imagery, because I've lost so many battles to the memory. I was 11 running around a track, a cloud of dust behind me, no one I can trust before me. I was fast, but I was unable to outrun the memory of being last to get home one evening. My molester was the reason. He led me to this unfinished building, much like the life he was interrupting. He placed my hands on a concrete wall which had not been painted yet, and he painted a color on my life that I wouldn't soon forget. I was looking for safety, but there was none to be found. In the arms of the adults around me, I was often let down. Now, I don't want to forget those memories, although there was a time I wished they'd let me go. For so long I stood in their shadows. Now they must stand in my glow. Time is a funny thing. We must contend with the seasons it brings, and whoever we find ourselves to be. 10 pounds heavier or 5 pounds free, sometimes the path towards happiness is harder to see. Sometimes the good people we think we are is harder to be. As I get older, I'm less capable of holding up a fantasy. I'm more interested in unpacking what I know my truth to be. Such is the messy business of understanding one's own humanity. I've been walking the beat of my own drum as long as I can find it. But sometimes I'm not sure why it beats anymore. I am frightened by the uncertainty that I can endure, and haunted by the question Tracy Chapman asks in song, why don't I dream anymore? I've been down a similar road before. When I was 22, I was looking for validation from others I had not yet learned to give myself. I found it, but I didn't find me. I learned that you should be careful what you trust other people's eyes to see. But I trusted them because I didn't love me. Eventually, I untangled myself from that web. I found life again from the places within that were dead. But as I said, time is a funny thing. Mental health can look like fall in spring. We can find clarity only to be confused again. I no longer abide in the certainty that I could stem the tide. I feel like past confidence lied about the foundation upon which I reside. Or maybe when I found some stability, I took too much liberty and overestimated my ability. Either way, it's hard to decide these days. The force that picks me up and brings me down comes in waves. Sometimes I feel like a warrior, and other times I feel like a slave. And I can't hold on to either, much like the hope I crave. Perhaps that's why I long for simplicity. I'm exhausted by the duplicity. Wearing a mask is its own cruelty, but for some it's also a necessity. This leads me to my new life philosophy, which is simply to avoid what costs more than it gives. It's a challenge to find a new way to live, but it makes it easier to find what I'm looking for now. A reason to rise and a reason to bow. A reason to get up after I've fallen. A reason to answer the phone when a loved one is calling. A reason to admit that I'm lost and I'm broken. A reason to laugh, although I'm really not joking. A reason that makes all the reasons that used to matter again. A reason to cope. Yes, Oprah. These days, I'm just looking for hope. I'm Akil Johnson, the Poet God. Thank you for listening.